right, good evening and welcome to the Knowledge Exchange session. Tonight we'll be talking about the unfortunate topic of gun violence and how do we get there? And how do we prevent these things? Where do we start? And so tonight we're going to meet some people in the community, some different nonprofit organizations, some different from different aspects so we can get a hold of this. Gun violence is affecting everybody in everyday lives. So I am Charlie Bell. I am one of the moderators here. My background, I did 13 years in corrections in juvenile adult, Ohio and Kentucky. Currently, I run two nonprofit organizations. One is called Get Better Every Day, GBED, which facilitates some mentoring of young kids to early adult, and the Chandler Project, which helps people who have been wrongfully convicted of crimes put their life back together post conviction. But tonight, I'm going to introduce my colleague as well, Ms. Naila, and we're going to get the party started.
Thank you. Can y'all hear me okay? Well, greetings, everyone. My name is Naila Imanyara Sirakali. I'm the Regional Program Manager for the Division of Family Resource Youth Service Centers. Along with Charlie, we're both on the Community Advisory Board of the Community Engagement and Outreach Corps, which is under the Louisville Clinical and Translational Research Center. And, we are a part of this community board, which helps to identify the needs, ideals, and research of the community, bringing what is known as the ivory tower to the community. So it's not about what we can do to you, but rather it's about how we can assist you with what you feel can mitigate overarching needs of the community. So we are both on that board, representing our community. I am a Russell resident. I'm also on the Russell Place of Promise board as well. And really, I grew up in Louisville. I grew up in West Louisville. I live in West Louisville. So, I'm really passionate about my community and really want to see positive change takes place. So that's one of the reasons why I'm here. And so I'm excited about the presentation. So I welcome you all, and we're going to go ahead and get started.
Okay, so the purpose of the Knowledge Exchange sessions is to provide an interactive forum to bridge community engagement, research, and practice. Let us co-create a respectful exchange of knowledge across disciplines and with community stakeholders that accelerates innovation and impact. We welcome anyone interested in shaping the future of research and medical practice together. Resource vendors in health and wellness industry as well as sponsors. Any questions you have, we'll have a panel and we can save those to the end. So this is our team, the knowledge community, the knowledge exchange sessions, the community engagement outreach team of Louisville Clinical and Translation Research Center, that's a whole mouthful, work to reduce barriers to improve health literacy, reduce research, mistrust, and increase collaboration in community-based participatory research by strengthening existing and forming new community partnerships. And this, you should have this on your handouts as well. And to get started, we're going to go ahead and start this knowledge exchange session. We have the founder of Boss Not Bangers. I want to introduce you to Demetrius McDowell Sr. He is a Louisville community advocate and the driving force behind Boss Not Bangers. As a person of reentry and formal justice-involved individual, McDowell, he has transformed his life into a beacon of hope. He created a program specifically aimed at juvenile justice-involved juveniles, using mental health support, entrepreneurship, and mentorship to help them change their perspective and find new paths in addition to his nonprofit work.
My name is Demetrius McDowell. I started Bosses Not Bangers, and what it is it's an organization that's changing the perspective of the youth in our community through mental health and entrepreneur mentorship via collaboration with nonprofits and community leaders. Like I said, my name is Demetrius. Justice Involved Youth. I started out at 14 years old, left from home. And from there, I was in the Shepherd Square projects that actually got tore down. And from there, I just embraced the streets. Come from a single parent household. My mother had taken her niece and nephew when her sister had passed. So an only child, it gave me room to run the streets. It only took one summer before I was hooked on the dopamine of what the streets had to offer me. So I learned how to sell dope. Um, just anything that came with the streets, it was enticing. I got away with a lot of stuff. So, that dopamine just drives you to keep doing what it is that you're doing. So with that, I met aggression with aggression. Anytime there was a conflict, I'm going to get my gun. And one time, my cousin, I had enrolled back in school, and he had got into it with somebody at school. So I took my gun to school because a guy pulled the gun out on him. So from there, I was charged as an adult with a gun and had to go to circuit court, kept me out of school for 2 years. So with that, I went back to the street because I couldn't go back into school or whatever. So for 2 years, I'm out here training to be a street guy. And that's the part I think that's a big disconnect when it comes to doing any type of outreach work or bridging the gap between individuals that come from that lifestyle. Street mentality is a real thing. And if we got any clinical people in here who, yeah, it's a real thing. And it really doesn't get taken serious until data reports come out. And I don't want to speak too much into that because, I've been scolded a couple of times about you can't say people are not doing it. I would just say they're not effective. And the reason why I say a lot of it's not effective because there's not the core guys or women who come from that background that are involved in this work. I think Jesus went and got people that people would believe they're changed when they did. So this is the same thing when you get credible messengers out of the street. It has to be somebody that been through it to speak to it. Other than that, our kids know how to manipulate us as babies. Cry for a bottle, you're gonna come feed them or whatever. But the same thing goes with these programs. Our kids are starting to learn how to trick the system. Come in, I'll do your checklist or whatever, but I'm not paying attention to none of this program. It's usually when somebody gives a real life experiences where we really can relate to. And just being honest, like I asked a couple of my individuals, like, what is your parents' job? And they'll say, take care of me, keep a roof over my head, feed me. And okay, so what's your job as a child? I'm supposed to listen, do what they say, this, that, and the other. So with that, I also ask them, what can your parents do to help you more? The answer that I get every time is tell us the truth. Stop lying to us about what y'all did as kids so that we don't go out here and learn it from somebody else and be manipulated by them. So I speak to that and I relate to that because my 20-year-old cousin who had 25-year-old and 30-year-old friends accepted me in their crew at 14. And from there, like, why would I go back home? When I'm accepted in my peers are now 30. So with that, I adapted that I can say violent nature because you can't be a punk in the street. You can't let nobody take anything from you. So when we talk about bridging the gap or getting into the core issues, there's not a platform for people of reentry who have actually been through it that's a part of the work. I personally being in it, my reason for getting in, I'm gonna point out my guy right here, Norman Parker. He's out of Victory Park. He's gonna talk soon. But during the pandemic, I saw him on the news and I know his background. I'm like, what is he doing up there? It's for all the stuff that he's been into. But it was a wake up call for me because I realized that guys my age, I'm 46, I'll be 46 December 11th. So I noticed that guys my age were starting to recruit young people to do their dirty work. And now the courts are now charging our 14-year-olds as adults when they catch them with a gun. So they're trying to get that thing out of the way of getting young people to do your dirty work. But it just registered to me when I was 14, this is the same thing that happened with me. So with him being out there, knowing his background, and me being one of those individuals that was manipulated at 14 years old, I felt like I should get up and do something because I can see what these young men or young women are going through, what they're going to go through, because there's $1 billion industry, whether it's rap or whatever, that tells you you can be successful if you rob, steal, or kill. Then we had an artist from this city who's, I guess you could say, in the same group of like Jay-Z. This guy's taking pictures with this guy, Jay-Z, who tells the world that I sold drugs to make it to this status. So when we have a homegrown hero to these kids who has made it in the industry for doing all the things that they grew up in their environment seeing. So now we cross over to social media. And I had to be outside to see the drug dealing, the killing. Now you can just get on social media and be in Chicago. So the upscale or the uptake in balance that happened from my perspective and my paying attention to what's going on is that Louisville started adopting Chicago ways. So to be an artist, you have to disrespect the dead, go to the cemetery, do all type of things to someone's grave, and then that turned into when it was disrespect, you disrespecting somebody's dead homie, friend, or whatever. So this is where we're playing with people's grieving. And when you playing with people's grieving, the first thing you want to do is the revenge your loved ones who had passed. So our young people it started trending. So then it was the drop your location, tell somebody where you at so they can come and kill you. I never understood that. But these are the things, the trending topics on social media that has got our youth where we at today. You don't see groups of individuals in the community anymore. You see them in chats and social media. So it's actually scary. We went from letting video games to raise our kids to now we're letting social media as a means to get to different cities to be exposed to different things. So these are the things that I take into account. And the only thing I could come up with is that if us guys who have that reputation from the street don't get involved, and the people who have the education and the position don't connect with those individuals from the street, the reentry people, the credible messengers who have lived testimonies that it's more believable coming from them. I think we're in trouble. Like it's real scary to know that the value of life is zero to these individuals. It's really a game. Who's familiar with GTA, Grand Theft Auto? Who's familiar with Call of Duty? So you just imagine your 5-year-old on up to 13-year-old playing this game. It's kids out here that really can't even read but can tell you every assault rifle. Remember we had an uptake in carjackings. Now all of this is coming from either video games. Now what I see, I can believe. So now when they seeing it on social media, it's believable. At first, it was a fairy tale for somebody like myself to sit around and talk about what I used to do back in the day. Like now they can go to YouTube or just scrolling. You can see all of it. So now it's a drop in what is it? Empathy. Like the value of life, like I said, is zero now. So our kids are not taking this serious. So if we're talking about bridging the gap or how we can curb gun violence, I think we have to give a platform to people of reentry. I come from the street mentality of, if you want to call it programming. You know, I did all of this to fit in rooms like this, to talk to people like this, but I'm really more so engaging in the community. I'm trying to show a product of change in my community to those guys who come from that background. Like I said, indirectly, he inspired me because I know his background of everything that he done. You know, and to see him get involved, it made me want to get involved. And I think that other individuals like us who come from that mentality, who are passing the torch and the baton to our young individuals to keep this balance, this cycle of balance going, that's where the change is going to be created from. Coming into this, I guess the cliche answer would be, what 2 things do you got coming into the street life? What do you got? Somebody throw it out there for me, please. 2 things you got coming when you go into the street. Death or jail. But we was never given the third option that you can get out. That was never given. The turn yourself into an entrepreneur, you know, get into something else. So that was the reason for Bosses Not Bangers, because it speaks for itself. As a boss, you have to stand as an individual, create opportunities for others. If anybody's ever read my messages on my shirt, so I had to make it cool. These young men back here are the definition of Bosses Not Bangers. They have their own clothing line called Resilient Hustle. And with that, they don't have no care in the world to get into the streets because they see themselves winning right now, doing what they're doing as far as being entrepreneurs. So if you ever read the shirt on the bottom, it says, "We squash the beef to get the money." Some people would think that means grant writing and chasing grants. No, that's street language for If it's about some money, a lot of people usually resolve conflict because of that. So, like I said, come from a street mentality, if you want to call it programming, but I call it a formula. It's a mathematical relationship. If the numbers add up, we can squash the beef. And then on the back, it says, doing right has never been wrong. So if we can get our street mentality guys who have this influence, who are coming back into the community and starting outreach in prison, and those guys who are credible messengers who have influence in their community, have a job going to Goodwill, working for Pivot to Peace or OVP or one of these urban league, any one of these people. But if you take that guy who has a whole neighborhood that would follow him doing the wrong thing, I guarantee you, by example, if you gave him that platform to go back into his community and gave him $70,000, $80,000 a year to change his community around, it would happen. I'm at 1 minute now. Okay, so with that being said, I hope I didn't talk nobody in circles, but I really just come from a street mentality and it's unconventional. So it's not really accepted in certain rooms. I almost come off as like an alien when I speak about the difference between programming because it's like I'm just a catch. I'm a credible messenger. I'm relatable. You put me in a room with any individual, within 5 minutes, I'm gonna have their attention. Instead of them coming programmed for 4 and 5 months, and they just coming for the reason or the checklist that certain organizations have. I come with a street mentality and I'm just a catch. I want to partner with those other individuals who can take them the rest of the way. That's why I partnered with Dr. Shawita Smith. So she handles a lot of my mental health when it comes to that. So that's why my mission statement is providing a change of perspective through mental health and entrepreneurship, because I can explain and she can explain what are you thinking when you're going through this, because social media has presented a false reality. And as we all know, the brain is a sensitive organ. You can get caught up in your thoughts. How many of us men and women have done stupid things out of love? It's the same thing when you have love for the streets and the streets don't love you back. And you don't find out until you get shot up or one of your homeboys cross you. Because slime is a thing. That's what the kids say. Slime is taking advantage of your buddy because he trusts you and snake him out. And these are the things that are trending. So when you're not talking with a street mentality and an understanding, it's not really gonna go too far when you're talking medical terms and they're not even understanding. Like I have individuals that can't read. So doing daily reports that I do with them, they drawing pictures, and because of the relationship, and they don't mind talking to me, I can have those conversations and understand where they're coming from. But bridge the gap with street mentality guys. That way we can do this work faster. Thank you.
And so thank you all. So this next presenters that we have showing up, I was especially excited about that because a couple months ago, the city had a call to action because of so much gun violence going on. And they showed up. And not only did they show up, they showed out. And it's because of that, we now have the RACE, the Real Alternative Community Empowerment. So can we please welcome Dr. Smith and Norman Parker. Mr. Parker is the community lead for the California Victory Park neighborhood and the co-founder of We All We Got Hood to Hood. Parker also serves as the program manager for the California Proud CVI initiative. Under Norman's leadership, the Victory Park neighborhood has experienced a significant reduction in violence over the past decade, largely due to his hands-on, community-tailored approach. Dr. Smith is a licensed mental health therapist with 18 years of experience in the social work field and 15 years of direct clinical practice. She is also a certified personal trainer and nutritionist specializing in holistic health. She is passionate about helping people heal inside and out, using therapy for the mind and movement of the body while bridging the gap between the both. Smith is also a speaker and community advocate, as well as her own owner of Total Life Counseling and Wellness, a community-based mental health and wellness agency that works with all ages. Thank you all for what you do.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. So I'm Dr. Shawita Smith, owner of Total Life Counseling and in Wellness. I've been in private practice for 7 years doing community work, but I'm also a member of RACE, Real Alternative Community Engagement. So What he was saying is so true. We're dealing with years and years of generational trauma, but we're dealing with generational thinking as well. So that thought process, the street mentality, is very, very real. And to me, just being a previous probation officer and a therapist at JCYC, these youth lack engagement. And as a therapist, I noticed that it's not all about just putting a band-aid on the issues, but we do lack engagement in our community. So along with race, our goal is to develop an ecosystem of different organizations to come together to provide these services, and not only provide interventions, but preventative services as well.
Good evening. I'm Norman Parker, and I come out of the California neighborhood. Just a little background about me. I grew up in the California neighborhood, Victory Park to be exact. And one thing that I've learned about this work when it comes to community organizing, and if we're going to get real about addressing the violence that we see going on in these communities, it has to be community led. The community members have to come out and lead the initiative. They want more, that we want more out of our communities than what we see with the violence, right? Because anything outside of the community leading the initiative is people coming in on the clock. And violence doesn't have a clock. Violence is 24 hours a day. So the community is going to have to take on the ownership for leading the change. And one thing, a little more background about me. I grew up, like I said, I grew up in the Victory Park neighborhood. As a child, you mimic what you see, whether it's right or wrong, right? It's a learned behaviors are learned. And prime example of that, like me getting up every day, coming out of my house, going into the park. Every day you seeing drug transactions, violence, people, just the street life daily. So when you see it daily, your mind thinks nothing's wrong with it because it goes on every day, 24 hours a day. And so it wasn't until I was arrested in 2002, for behaviors in the streets, and then sitting inside a prison for 7 years. And I come home 2009. I had my son, my first child, my son. And it was that moment when I had my son, I attached to something. So me attaching to my son, I wanted to change my life to be here for my son. And what did I want my son to know me as and look at me as, right? So that led to change in me to go back into my community where I was once a transmitter of violence, right? And then a lot of what Demetrius was speaking on when he's speaking on the phones, these phones are transmitters. This is the number one lead in violence in the communities right now. They are going in transmitting videos and enticing death, and so we got to get a handle on the transmitters of violence. And then it comes in body language. Like, it's a language that violence speaks, that if you come from it, you can see it. And one of the things that we do in the community with the work is we get in front of the transmitters once we see them, right? And so if we hosting an event in the park and we see a group of kids huddled up and they got the phones up like this, we know that they talking to somebody that they don't like, and they're antagonizing them to come out. And so we get out in front of these transmitters to slow down the transmission of violence that goes on in these communities. And I think I lost myself, but in 2010, I took over the neighborhood organization, which is the California Federation in the California neighborhood. And through my leadership with the California Federation, we was able to make some leadways in the community, and the community bought into the message of wanting more for ourselves, right? And so along with my leadership and hosting events and bringing out, we hosted a kickball league for 2 years, no violence, so the mayor and everybody comes out. And so we laid the foundation for opportunities and partnerships to come in. And Olmsted Parks was one of our partners, one of our early on partners that came in. And Olmsted comes in, and we did a remodel Victory Park, if y'all, I don't know if y'all familiar with it, but Victory Park just had a renovation done probably 5, 7 years ago. Maybe I could be off a little bit, but it was the efforts that the community put in to say we want more. You know, we're gonna address these issues heads on, and we're gonna come together to slow down some of the violence that we see going on. And if you look at the data that's out there now, it seems as if it's a bubble over the Victory Park neighborhood because of the way the community came together. And so we believe that with the initiative that we led in Victory Park, that we can pass that on to other neighborhoods in the community. And so that's where we come in with race. We feel we have a model that we can take neighborhood to neighborhood in this city and really bring about some change. And so when Councilwoman Hawkins hosted the community event and asked for people to come out that are concerned with the violence and who wants to make a difference in it, then it was a group of us that heard the call and came out. And we really feel that through collaborative efforts, and like I say, it got to be community led. We feel that we can get in here and activate these communities and really get them to buy into owning change in the neighborhood and really slowing down some of the violence that we're seeing. So with that being said, I give it back to Shelly.
The buy-in is super important. I've noticed that even doing mental health for 15 years, we lack just family involvement. A lot of parents don't come to therapy with their children. We do a lot of school-based therapy, community-based therapy, and the parents are not involved. And generationally, that's been a problem. So if we can get a hold of the parents' mental health, that will trickle down into the household. We need to get a hold of the parents, the grandparents, because there is still a stigma related to mental health. You would think that it wouldn't be by now, but the stigma is huge. So coming together collectively with other organizations, I want to say there are so many organizations here in Louisville that engage families, provide mental health services, but we're not all familiar with all of the services provided. So if we can all become familiar and get the families to what they need to get to, that's important because the engagement piece is so, to me, the preventative piece is more important than the intervention. We can throw band-aids, we can provide mental health services, but if we don't have the front end part, we're going in circles. Um, so that's the biggest thing with race is just bringing everybody together that's already doing the work, that's been doing the work for a long time, and just getting the people to where they need to go to. Yeah, so I'm also from the West End of Louisville too. I became a single mom at 17. So, but I was always involved in sports activities. But I did notice the moment I didn't become involved in anything, that's when I really started getting in trouble in school. I was fighting, suspended a lot. My grades went down. So, and I asked a client today, I said, what do you do every day? Nothing. It's always nothing. Video games, phone, in the house. Nobody does nothing from the parents, from the older kids to the smaller kids. They have nothing to do. So my goal as a mental health provider is not only to provide individual services and family services, but more engaging activities. So we are located inside the YMCA. I'm also a board member there. So I'm trying to develop and initiate more family involved activities inside the Y in the community as well, especially the California community. But it takes all of us as a whole, the researchers, the case managers, mental health workers, everybody to come together.
And then I just want to piggyback on, like I say, the behaviors are learned, right? So if these kids doesn't have positive role models and positive influences in their lives guiding them, then there's a whole system out there that we know of that will lead them. You know, all you gotta do is turn your radio on. You know, you turn the radio on, you're gonna hear transmissions of violence. You know, you get on TV, you're gonna see violence being transmitted. So there's a whole system out there that's leading the kids that's unled, right? So it's one of those to where, what do you want your child to learn? You're either gonna guide them or they're gonna be guided by a system that leads them down paths in these urban communities. And so I just wanted to touch base on that as well. So you want something? You got something you want to add, Mitch?
Nah, that's it. The street mentality has now become commercial. TikTok, they're then dances to ballad music, which is normalizing. So you see parents with kids doing da 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 da. They shoot in videos, but it's fun and entertaining. And their goal is to go viral. We don't even have skilled labor workers anymore because all our kids just want to do. The only way to intercept that is from a credible message of street mentality, somebody that can tell you they got a place for you. And you, yeah.
And culturally relevant resources are so important. You do have to be relatable to these kids. That's just how it is nowadays. You said something, you said parents. You'll be surprised how many parents are not engaging with their kids, asking them how they're doing on a daily basis. Not focus on their needs, educational needs, their social life. They don't even ask about their social life. They're just so disconnected. So again, my goal is to engage the parents because that's where it starts. It starts with the family unit.
And now we're going to get even a little deeper than that, right? So we have Miss Iona Palmer. Iona Palmer is an upcoming year 4 medical student at the University of Louisville School of Medicine who is currently completing a dedicated academic research year as a deemed research scholar. She is conducting research at the Collins Lab at the U of L Center of Cardiometabolic Science, where she studies how pregnancy impacts maternal cardiovascular health. In addition to cardio-stress, Palmer has a strong clinical and research interest in maternal substance use, intimate partner violence in pregnancy, and how firearm violence plays a role in these settings. She is deeply motivated by understanding that patient health is influenced not only by clinical factors, but also by community, environment, and lived experience. So this goes even beyond, well, prior to the child even being born. And so I appreciate you because we need our young people to understand from the moment of conception on that these things are happening. So without further ado, Ms. Iona Palmer.
Thank you so much for that introduction. That was very kind. So my name is Iona, and as my lovely introduction said, I'm a medical student at the University of Louisville. I took a little bit of a different path from what is usually experienced during medical school, and that I'm currently out of the clinical environment and taking a year to just focus on researching women's health in the lab perspective. Thank you.
Okay.
So yes, I'm currently studying in a lab at the Center for Cardiometabolic Sciences that looks at how being pregnant affects mom's heart, both in the short term while she's pregnant, immediately after delivery, and then also in the long term, because it's not something anybody's ever really looked at before. This time next year, I'm also going to be applying for my first job as an obstetric and gynecology provider. Outside of the lab and outside of school, I volunteer with the Center for Women and Families, which is very, very gratifying experience. And as was mentioned, I have a strong interest in substance use disorder and pregnancy. So speaking about gun violence, I think we have to step back and look at it on a national scale before we kind of scale in and look at our community. This is a national public health crisis. Data from Johns Hopkins shows that firearm-related injuries are increasing, and that in 2023, total gun suicide deaths reached a national all-time high. So this is a really, really big thing that we have to tackle. In Kentucky, looking at that same time period of 2023, we had 841 gun deaths, which is 841 too many. Of these, about 550 of them were suicides, 260 were homicides, and 48 of them were people under the age of 18. So this is not only affecting our adults, and it's not only affecting people in the urban communities, but you can see in that heat map that it's affecting our rural communities as well. So really, gun violence doesn't discriminate. In the context of pregnancy, which is my focus for today, I really want to highlight that pregnant women represent a really unique group in the context of gun violence, because it frequently intersects with intimate partner violence, which is also often known as domestic violence. Intimate partner violence, studies have shown that it affects between 4 and 6% of pregnant and recently postpartum individuals. But I want to emphasize that this is likely a gross underestimate, because all of these studies rely on the victim reporting that they have been harmed. So think about all of the people that have potentially experienced violence and haven't said anything to anyone. Those numbers don't reflect that. Potential effects of intimate partner violence during pregnancy include an increased risk of baby being born too early or too small, which can affect baby's health, direct fetal injury and possible death. It almost always inevitably affects mom's mental and physical health, and there is always a risk of maternal death. And all of these negative factors are especially heightened when firearms are present in the intimate partner violence. So how does this affect Louisville? I did a little study on this, because despite all of the grave risks that I kind of just mentioned that affect mom and baby in the setting of gun violence, this is a topic that remains understudied. Trying to find background information for this presentation was very challenging, because not enough people study it. And unfortunately, a lot of my information that I pulled was from the CDC. It's no longer on the CDC main page these days, it's in the CDC archives. So you have to dig a little deeper to actually find it. But this project analyzed sort of the patterns of people's backgrounds and injuries when they were pregnant and sustained a gunshot wound between the years of 2012, 2022. And my goal really was to draw attention to this topic. I used data that was maintained by U of L's trauma surgery department and radiology department. And I went through and I read these patients' charts and their stories, and I pulled pieces of information and images from them without sharing any patient names or other identifying factors. So what did I find by reading these charts? I found 23 pregnant patients that fit my criteria who had experienced gunshot wounds in the time period. They ranged from age 17 to age 36, with an average age of about 26. The most common age was 27. And what I found was that most of these injuries by far were the result of assault, with almost 90% of the injuries being inflicted on the pregnant woman by somebody else. The second most common category was accidental injury, and self-inflicted wounds were the lowest of all the categories. Important to highlight, I think, is that almost 80% of my patients were either publicly insured from Medicaid or didn't have any insurance at all. So you can see that this is really predominantly affecting groups that may not have access to the private insurance and other sort of resources that come with people that are able to afford private insurance. So I've just thrown a whole lot of numbers at you, but I think that in order to really get the point across that this is affecting individuals, I've got some pictures here. This first picture is patient A, and that will be on your left side of the screen. And this was a lady that was unhoused, and she had an issue of substance use disorder. And she got into a conflict with somebody else with substance use disorder who ended up shooting her in the belly. So thankfully, the injury didn't go very deep into the belly. She ended up being all right, baby ended up being all right. But I used this image because this is a victim of gun violence, and it really clearly shows that there are two people involved in here, not just one. The second image, the middle image, patient B was driving her car when she was shot through the window, and she experienced injuries to her thigh and to her face and to her brain. She was rushed to the University of Louisville Emergency Department, and neurosurgeons tried to intervene and to save her, but unfortunately she died. And the last patient is a patient who was pregnant at the time that she was assaulted. It was an armed robbery, but she's not pregnant in this picture. However, she had some lasting effects from her injuries, and I really used this image to highlight that even if your injury happened long ago, that the mental and the physical consequences can remain. Surgeons can try and go out there and get all of the fragments of a bullet, but sometimes it's so broken up that you can't. It's stuck there. It's with you forever. So what do I really hope that you hear from all of this? Pregnant women sustaining gunshot wounds at our hospital are most often young, they're most often publicly insured, and it's most often another person that injures them. I really want this to ignite discussion on the importance of trauma obstetric, trauma pregnant care, and to really hope that somebody out here helps us with developing violence prevention strategies for our pregnant patients and for our women in our community. I'd be remiss if I didn't include in this presentation some resources. As I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, I volunteer with the Center for Women and Families, and the name is a little bit misleading in that you might think that it only serves women and children, but it serves everybody. So if you are ever a victim, or somebody you know is ever a victim of interpersonal domestic violence or assaults, it serves everybody 24/7, 365. There's always somebody available to help you with counseling resources and direct you to any healthcare if you need it in that time. There's also the National Domestic Violence Hotline, and we have right here across the street a level 1 trauma center should you need it. And we provide everything from low risk obstetric care, low risk pregnancy care to high risk pregnancy care. I just want to take a minute to thank everybody that was involved in this project, the Department of Surgery, the Department of Radiology, and everybody else that goes unthanked in taking care of patients. It's a really good, big job that takes a lot of people to take care of a patient, from the nurses that give medicines and take care of hour-to-hour, minute-to-minute needs, to doctors that prescribe the medicines, to the people that keep our environments in the hospital clean and bring our food trays and things like that. So thank you, everybody who helps to take care of my patients.
We have our part 2 presenters coming up. First, we'll have the co-executive directors of Future Healers. Dr. Ashley Shea Benton is the co-executive director of the Future Healers, a Louisville-based program that connects youth affected by community violence and physicians, mentors, and hands-on experiences in medicine. Dr. Benton is a recent medical school graduate and current MBA student, is passionate about building bridges between healthcare and healing, empowering young people to find hope, purpose, and belonging through education and community care. With her is Zaina Casey, and Zaina is a 4th-year medical student at the University of Louisville School of Medicine. And as co-executive director of Future Healers, she leads programming that connects trauma impact youth to hands-on learning in medicine, wellness, and community leadership. Casey centers her activism on empowerment, creating spaces where young people can learn, lead, and be authentically recognized. So without further ado, I'm going to hand the mic over.
Hey everyone, we are here talking about the Future Healers program, the Kiddos Medical Program. Basically, our main goal is to kind of think of the idea of what if hospitals could do more than just treat firearm-related injuries? What if we can step in and do primary prevention and make an impact where maybe we're not treating as many in the hospital? I would go over the Meet the Presenter slide, but I think we just had a very lovely introduction. I'm Ashley Shea, and this is Zaina. We've been the co-executive directors for we're going on our second year, so we've been around for quite a while. Now, before I get too deep into, our program and what we do and who we serve, I want to give you all some context on how we started the program and why we started it. So let's start with the challenge that we are facing. So don't freak out, big scary graphs, no big deal, okay? This is just the data behind why we do what we do. So this is the data on gun violence. This research was done right here at the University of Louisville back in 2020, 2022. Around the time that we started noticing some really alarming trends in light of the COVID-19 pandemic. So we're going to start over here on this graph. Obviously, this is the incidence of gun violence right here in Jefferson County. We're not at zero, not a perfect zero, but we've been hanging around kind of that same incidence level for quite a while. And that is for, interpersonal, all-cause intentional or self-inflicted, unintentional wounds, all of these things. But then whenever COVID happened, we saw something that was really scary. And that's when, we have this trend and then boom, it shoots up. Okay. So COVID happens and we're seeing a lot more firearm violence right here in Louisville. We're like, okay, that's not great. Why is this happening? In the same study, we also kind of looked at a different perspective on firearm-related injuries, aside from just the incidence itself, is how many years of life lost do we have? So it's more than just, people from this age to this age. This number of people passed away. How many years of life did they lose, right? You lose more years of life if you pass away at 15 than if you do at 95, right? Does that make sense? So that's kind of why this graph looks the way it does. But whenever you look at it, the red is representing the interpersonal gun violence deaths. The gray is the COVID-19 deaths. And this is along a continuum of ages, right? So the younger you are, the more likely you were during this time period to pass away from interpersonal gun violence versus the farther on the spectrum you are, the older that you are, the more likely you were to pass away from COVID-19 or something related. So besides the numbers, though, it's more than just that, right? It wasn't just, okay, the pandemic happened and now we have more gun violence. There's a lot of different factors to consider whenever we think about gun violence and what perpetuates it. So you have things that happen on the individual level, right? You have things like adverse childhood events. You have things like access to firearms, mental health, impulsivity, things like that. More than that, you also have interpersonal things. So this is like peer pressure, the folks that you're running around with, family dysfunction, a history of family violence. You also have community factors. So this is where you look at more of like community level violence. You look at segregation, unemployment rates, things like that. And last but certainly not least, you look at the society. So that's going to be how cultural norms that you all have, we've heard quite a bit about so far already, how that perpetuates violence in our communities, structural violence, racism, criminal justice system, poverty, regulations, all of that jazz. And kind of continuing on, it's more than numbers. I think, you all wouldn't be sitting in this room if something didn't happen in your life for you to be passionate about conversations around firearm violence, right? Because it's about more than just the person that is injured, right? If something happened to me, it doesn't just affect me, right? It affects my partner, it affects my sister, my family, my friends on that family level. So my direct trauma gives them, those adverse experiences that could predispose them to even more trauma. Similarly, it's not just my family, right? It's my coworkers, it's my friends, it's the people I volunteer with, it's my community. Sprinkling with that, some other folks might be injured in the process. So you have, a cycle of violence going up to the society level where you have a whole slew of people that, I think it's probably fair to say that if you meet any random person, they probably know someone who's been directly impacted by firearm violence, right? Or some sort of adverse childhood experience that could predispose them to that type of violence.
All right, so we're going to kind of talk about the origin of the program. Future Healers actually dates back to 2020. One of our own, Karen Yoda, who's currently completing her internal medicine residency at Hopkins, and she just matched into fellowship, so yay, Karen. She's the one who founded this program, and the mission behind it was to really build a stronger bridge between the healthcare community and our local youth who were specifically impacted by gun violence. I wanted to highlight the partnership model that we have. We work with the University of Louisville School of Medicine. We work with the Trauma Institute, the Department of Surgery, SNMA, and Christopher 2X Game Changers as well, all of which have been a great asset to our growth. We actually started off with 25 students back in 2020, and we have grown immensely. We now have over 400 students. And this is just kind of like an overview of what we do. I'm going to start off. It's quite a bit of what we do, but we have our main lessons that we do every month. Like I said, we host over 400 students. We help teach them about trauma-informed health, safety, coping skills, all of which our students are about 4 to 13 years of age. We also help our younger ones, ages 3 to 4 at the YMCA every month as well. So we kind of cater it for them. And we do mirror some of like our curriculum that we have at the main lesson forum. More recently, we've had our mentorship program for our students 13 to 17, where we allow for the medical students to provide guidance, support, and exposure to the healthcare pathways as well. And more recently, for our no longer youth, for those above 18, we help give them exposure to leadership development and experience and get them into the hospitals, get that, one-on-one exposure and mentorship. More recently, and kind of things that we've been doing throughout the years, is community outreach. Anybody who asks us to come in, table, provide demonstrations, stop the bleed, right? We're out there, we're helping, and we love to do it. And then lastly, I just want to give a little shout out to our workbook, which is a workbook that we've been working on, where we focus on trauma-informed health education. We've now actually incorporated that all in JCPS and our Bardstown school system as well. So what have we learned so far? I'm going to talk about a quick study that we've done. So back in 2022, we actually surveyed 92 kids and 64 caregivers, really assessing the firearm violence exposure and their perceptions of the healthcare system as a whole. And what are some of our findings? So one of the big things is, I'm going to read this loud and clear, 95% of caregivers and 84% of children reported experiencing at least one form of firearm violence, whether it's personal injury, witnessing it, having friends or family injured. 95%, you guys. And not only that, we actually looked at that proximity. 60% of our kids are actually within 400 meters. Guys, that's nothing, 400 meters. And that's something that I just wanted to highlight here within our study to bring attention to into some numbers. On a positive note, despite this high exposure to violence, 91% of children and 79% of our caregivers still have trust within a healthcare system. It's not 100%, but it is high up there, and we need to do better. And lastly, I just wanted to kind of put this in here and talk about it. 60% of our kids believe that they can become healthcare providers, and 53% have expressed interest in medical and STEM professions, and this kind of goes hand in hand with our mission in Future Healers.
You've heard a little bit about what we started in the first few years, how that's impacted our community. Let's talk about what we're learning next. Now, I can't give you all the spoilers, but we are working on a research study right now. So we have some cool things down the pipeline. So our current project, let me come over here. That way I make sure I don't lie to everyone. So the purpose for this is to evaluate how we are influencing our kiddos, right? But not just that, you all kept mentioning, parents and parent involvements. We're also studying them to see how being involved in the Future Healers program as a kid, as a parent, is changing their perspectives on gun violence or firearm violence. We are seeing how their emotional stress related to firearm related trauma has changed. Exposure to and trust in the healthcare field, and interest in healthcare careers. Though, we're not here to tell every kid they have to be a doctor. If not a single kid that's in Future Healers ends up being a doctor, that's okay. But we want to show them that they can be if they want to. That's kind of a secondary thing that we've learned based on our first study. We were like, oh goodness, we're spending all this time with the kids and now they want to be doctors. That's awesome. Love that. So we've included that in our study as well. For who we're surveying, we're looking at kiddos who are less than 18 who are enrolled in our program between 2023 and 2024. And of course, those guardians attending events, because the kids wouldn't get there if the parents weren't there. We're all in this together kind of moment. The research is based on pre-surveys and post-surveys. And because we understand that some of the results that we get might be dependent on how often they are exposed to Future Healers and what we're doing, we are counting the primary exposure as the number of sessions that they attended. So, let's say for, trust in healthcare, let's say person A, is like this much more trustful of healthcare because they went to one section. to one session, maybe person number 2 will have like this much more trust in healthcare because they attended all of our 11 sessions. So we're keeping that in mind for this survey. And for measures, we are looking at change in firearm access and safety behaviors with firearms at home, changes in emotional trauma, stress regulation, those types of things. Of course, trust in healthcare, increased healthcare exposure, and interest in healthcare careers. Now, I can't give you all the numbers yet because they're not officially published and officially official yet, but some preliminary results are in. And one thing that we've noticed is that the kids and the parents that we're working with have reduced emotional stress related to gun violence, increased exposure to healthcare, and many of the kiddos have expressed a greater interest in healthcare after completing the program and working with us for the year. Now, why does this matter? This early shift suggests that future healers is supporting healing and trust in the healthcare system and within their home lives and within their situations. And it might also spark some interest in medical careers and guide similar programs. Like Zaina mentioned, we're not just in Louisville anymore. A few years ago, we were able to get a branch of our project down in Nashville with A Future Is Now Nash. We have some rural expansion projects. We have our Bardstown initiative. We're working with some other places. The workbook journal that we were just talking about, we are currently getting translated to Spanish so we can do the work that we do overseas. So it's not just here because it's not just a Louisville problem. Yes, we have Louisville data, but it's so much more than that.
All right. I just want to wrap up and say thank you to everybody that has given time, supported us, given us money to kind of continue the program on. We really do appreciate, every bit of time and effort that you guys have helped and supported us throughout our journey is what has contributed to our evolution over time. And we continue to expand. I mean, Ashley has mentioned the multiple programs and other programs that we're establishing at different institutions, one being Vanderbilt, we're going overseas. A lot of people are asking about how do we start these type of programs, and we're always here to help out and give them guidance. But we couldn't do it with everybody that's been here supporting us and helping us out. So thank you guys so much for having us, listening to what we do, and we're all ears for anybody that wants to continue to help us expand. We're here. Thank you all.
Thank you very much. Next, we have the representatives of U of L Hospital, J. David Richardson Trauma Center. We have Jessica Brown and Kiara James. Jessica Brown is the Injury Prevention Manager for the U of L Health, U of L Hospital, the J. David Richardson Trauma Center. She has a master's in public administration and a master's in urban planning from the University of Louisville. Brown as a certified planner and an extensive background in community engagement, neighborhood planning, and community development. At U of L Health, she develops new partnerships and programs to address Louisville's top causes of traumatic injury, manages U of L's hospital-based violence intervention program, the Future Healers Program, Youth Education Program, facilitates Stop the Bleed classes, and works to further develop MVC prevention and falls prevention initiative. Kiara James currently serves as the Hospital Violence Intervention Program Supervisor at U of L Health, U of L Hospital Trauma Center, where she leads a team of community health workers that provide critical support to patients impacted by gun violence. James also leads community engagement efforts for the hospital-based violence intervention program and the Stop the Bleed. Driven by a deep commitment to addressing health disparities, James focuses her work on improving hospital policies, enhancing patient experiences, and advocating for safer communities. She is also the founder of Pushing Forward Incorporated, a nonprofit that meets the needs of individuals who have experienced traumatic spinal cord injuries to support them in being independent, empowered, engaged, and connected to their community. So without further ado, please welcome our two presenters. Thank you so much for being here.
Hello, I'm Jess. I'm going to go first. Okay, so as was mentioned, we are from the Trauma Center, which is across the street. You can see it that way from here. U of L's been around a long time. I'm not going to spend time on this, but we're the community level hospital. I will say we are the level 1 trauma center for our region. And what that means is we see people from all over the states all around us, primarily, the counties in Louisville and surrounding, and it's a lot of people. There are other trauma centers regionally, like UK or Vanderbilt, so you have to travel if you need a high level care, that otherwise, if you're here, you're coming to us. So we, as a trauma center, have the highest trained doctors and staff in order to help folks who have traumatic injuries. And I'm not talking about mental health trauma, I'm talking about, in this context, physical trauma, in that moment when they are hurt, on the worst day of their lives. And then also we have highly skilled professionals that help them on a healing journey. And that is physical, emotional, and mental health, and trauma. And we like to say we practice trauma-informed care. We try to get better at it every day. These are the reasons people come to the trauma center usually. And I think that, gun violence gets a bad, a bad reputation for, it is very, it's a public health issue, but it is the third reason that people come. The number one reason people come to the hospital is falling and motor vehicle crashes. And so while this is a huge public health, crisis and very, very important, there is a context for the community. And in the last 3 years, our incidence of shootings and firearm injuries has gone down. So we know that the work being done at the community level, because we participate in community violence intervention strategies, is working. This is just gun violence injuries over the last 10 years. And so, like was said before, like in the middle is COVID era. And we know that a lot of things were shut down, schools were out, a lot of benefits were taken away, and things were happening that were rocking the social determinants of health and place for our community. And so we saw a very big uptick in gun violence and firearm injuries, and so did the whole country. But we also know that since a lot of those, like schools are back in session, a lot of our COVID relief funds have been actually in Louisville specifically been poured into programs that are at the community level, in the community centers, at the Office of Violence Prevention, and in our program as well, into the hospital-based violence intervention program, that we're seeing those numbers go down. I will say that the next slide, or sorry, one more. The red line is our pulling out of just those firearm injuries that are related to interpersonal violence. So those go up and down with the trend, but it also is increasing a little bit here lately, something that we are working on with our community partners. Further dissection of our numbers. In the red area, so we have about 77% of our firearm injuries are due to interpersonal conflict. Now that incorporates lots of interpersonal, person to person or group activities. It also includes domestic violence and things like that. So, but it is the majority of why we see firearm injuries here at our facility. We share a lot of the same research that you've seen presented, like for Future Healers and for some of the other presentations. But this is another one I wanted to add, is that we also have done some research that our physicians have done some research that incorporated shot spotter technology. And so what we know is that in the recent years, they studied from 2018 to 2021 in this particular publication that the number of shots fired, the number of rounds has increased dramatically. And they also have, some science that can determine the number of rounds that are discharged, and can kind of determine that, there are more rapid speed rounds being released and things like that, because they can measure the acoustics with that. And then we know that about 53,000 rounds went off in a certain period of time, which is like a ton for our size of the community. So we just have a lot of firearm activity. And we think, their research is showing that about 1.7% of the rounds actually resulted in an injury. So we know that there's a lot of activity going on at the community level, in addition to the injuries that we see inside the hospital. U of L Hospital has sort of taken, so as an injury prevention person, I'm going to talk public health language for just a moment, but we know that prevention is scalable, right? We know that there are individual and group and societal level ways that we can do prevention activities. And that's some of the things that you saw presented, like with the Future Healers, how we're doing individual mentorship and group work and things like that. But we also know that prevention can be before an injury occurs, primary prevention. We can do an intervention when an injury occurs, and we can also heal afterwards. So our primary and community level before the injury occurs prevention model is our Future Healers program. But our intervention once an injury occurs is at the hospital level. And that is through a partnership with Pivot to Peace through the Office of Violence Prevention. So when we talk about the hospital-based violence intervention program, that's really serving people that once they're hurt and they're here, they come by ambulance to the hospital for treatment. Like I said, on the worst day of their life, that is our hospital-based violence intervention program. And that, like I said, it's a network model based on a care violence model, based on community violence intervention, where we're working with neighborhood-based groups who are active in the communities, doing that work on the ground level, and bringing in that community work into the hospital and partnering with our community health workers who are hospital staff who are there trying to help that family in their moment of need inside the emergency department. But then the whole purpose is so that they can get back out at the community level and the work stays within the community. And it's not a silo, it's fluid, and it is community work together. And then we are also doing Stop the Bleed classes, which is a community education intervention when, we're teaching people how to basically stop bleeding if someone is already hurt. And with that, I'm going to give it to Kiera.
So hi, my name is Kiera James, and I have a team of 4 community health workers. So we usually have 2 that staff during the day, 2 at night. And so currently right now our night shift is coming in and I'm usually home, but I love being out here and talking to you all and educating you all about the programs that we do within our hospital. So we are a part of the Pivot to Peace program. Many have probably heard of it and there's been many iterations of it, but we are the hospital piece of it. So in knowing that we are the level 1 hospital in the region, we know that gunshot victims and patients are going to come to us. So we are able to provide real in-time treatment and also helping families get together and also being the liaison between the healthcare providers and the family, identifying the next of kin, making sure they get the information as fast as possible while allowing our healthcare professionals to work with their loved one. So yes, so we do use like the public health model when it comes to our HVIT program. So we know at the time of intervention, that is that teachable moment. We can identify what are some of those root causes, what's going on, and be able to intervene in that moment. When we're providing care, we want to make sure that we are meeting people where they're at in those needs and connecting them to services. Also, the follow-up is very important. So follow-up can look very different for everybody. It can look like connecting them to community partners, but also too making sure that they are coming back to the hospital to seek treatment from our staff. And sometimes that could look like safety planning. Sometimes that can look like I need to go somewhere closer to my house, or I don't have transportation to get there. So follow-up services and also scheduling appointments. If someone's mom is not able to schedule an appointment, then it might not happen. So if we can call them and make a follow-up appointment for them, they're more likely to come and we can prevent them from having, other complications. And then also addressing some of those social determinants of health that were likely going on at the moment before they came into the hospital, but just connecting them to those resources in which they may not have known about. So this is the team. This is me in front, and then you got Sean and Ruth who work at night, and then you have Janae and Crystal, which work mostly during the day. So our HVIP, the purpose of it is to target individuals who have experienced interpersonal violence, and then also to be able to teach during that teachable moment and reduce the risk of reentry. So we want to be able to provide that trauma-informed and family support as soon as that person comes in the door. So our office is literally in the emergency department. We get all the exhaust from the ambulances as well as the helicopters because we're that close and we're that stationed within the emergency room. So we can literally see people rolling in as soon as they come. But we also want to provide de-escalation. Why can't I say the word? De-escalation when you have individuals come into the hospital. So that looks different too. It could look like a patient not understanding why am I having to get my blood drawn 4 times a day, and no one's explaining to them like, hey, we need your blood because your blood count is low and we have to draw it every 4 hours. So sometimes that could be just educating a patient on why we have to do this so frequently. Pre and post discharge planning, setting a patient up for success when they leave. And that could happen at discharge, but also too, we understand that people can be overwhelmed while they're in the hospital. Like they are not worried about, what's going to happen to them. They're probably worried about their job. They're probably worried about their kids. They're probably worried about, because we understand life does not stop when you're in the hospital. So sometimes that planning and that community handoff does not happen until someone comes back to the hospital for a follow-up appointment. So we stay with them throughout that healthcare continuum. But then also being able to provide interventions immediately in the emergency room. So like I previously said, our community health workers are liaisons between the healthcare staff as well as the family. And then also we are community liaisons as well. Sometimes our community partners know the individuals who are in the hospital. So oftentimes that is a touch point for them to kind of sit down and be able to talk to them and get to them during that teachable moment as well. Inpatient family support. Oftentimes too, a patient may unfortunately be on vent, and we get to know the families before we even get to know the patient who's been impacted by violence. So building that rapport and that relationship with the family and supporting them through whatever it may look like to be able to help them through their moment of crisis as well. And then also being a patient during our room 9, people hear about it. But they may not know what it is, or they might think it's just a room and it's just the 9th room within the hospital, but it is our trauma resuscitation bay. All the level 1 hospitals pretty much have one, but we have ours that we call room 9. And in room 9 as a patient, you just may be overwhelmed if you are able to go in there. There's so much going on. It's fast paced. It is people kind of pulling and tugging at you, yelling things out, lots of lights, lots of people. And as a patient, it can be overwhelming and scary. And so some of the common challenges that patients face is just like understanding who is in the room, how many teams are going to be a part of it, and then also like where they can trust some of the healthcare providers, because there's just so many people you see that you're not going to remember someone's name. You may not even have time to build relationships with individuals. So as community health workers, we're able to take that time to sit down with patients, to understand what some of the things that they may be going through, even if that is just sitting in silence, being consistent and just being able to listen and or look, because I have had patients where I've just sat there for 3 days straight and they're like, wow, like you're just gonna come and sit in my room and not talk to me? I'm like, no, this is being present is just literally showing that you're consistent and being able to help somebody through their time of need, especially as a GSW survivor. So some of the needs that we've identified that some of our patients experience are just some of that mental health support. I think 2 weeks ago, I've had a patient text me and they were at a birthday party and they said the balloons popped and I was nervous. And they texted me and they were like, hey, are you okay? I was like, yes, but are you okay? They said, I just wanted to text you because I knew that you would understand what I was going through. And so just knowing that some of those triggers in community may be very insignificant to somebody else, but for somebody who's experienced a gunshot related wound, it's everything to them. It is safety. It is that violation of just that normalcy. It's a new normal. So for our program outcomes, we understand that being able to engage with our patients. When I came 7 years ago, it was kind of just me and like one other person. But now we have a team. We try to do that, but also getting patients to uptake in services that may look like mental health support. They may look like a connection with OVP and different community partners, but also making sure that they have long-term support systems as well. But then as far as over the last 10 years, this is the number of patients who've been injured that we've seen within our hospital. So
Well, this graph is just showing that like as we increase the staff, that's why I
Yeah.
changed it on you.
Okay.
I'm so sorry. When we increase the staff up to 4 through extra funding and stuff in 2021, 22, it started going down. So we know that the connection points are working at the hospital. Yeah, stop the bleed again. And
This is some of the certifications that which we have. So we're a community, certified community health workers with the state. We also have our hospital violence intervention program accreditation from the Health Alliance of Violence Intervention. So the hobby. We also go through nonviolence crisis training, go through our trainings with OVP as well. And then of course our other hospital requirements. And then we also go to conferences. Those are always fun and present at them as well. And then we try to give back. All of our patients, sometimes you don't get to see too much of their life once they leave the hospital, but being able to connect with them in moments where we can bring them back. So we have MINT, which is our support program for survivors of gun violence that we conduct at the hospital, and our community health worker, Janae, runs that. But then we also do Trauma Survivor Night in May on National Trauma Survival Day. But then we also started a award where we make sure that we recognize people for their trauma response in our community.
Thank you.
That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, ladies. Appreciate you. Our next presenter is Dr. Ivan Benitez. Dr. Benitez joined the City of Louisville Office of Violence Prevention in 2022 as an Everytown Fellow. During his time as fellow, Benitez developed Louisville's Gun Violence Dashboard, a vital tool for tracking and analyzing violent crime trends across various geographical levels. He now serves as the head of OVP's Data Innovation and Special Projects Division, where he leads a team focused on integrating evaluation components into the organization's programs and initiatives. Recently, Benitez and his team has begun the evaluation process for Louisville's newly designed community violence intervention sites. We welcome you.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming out. So a little bit of the research that we presented recently at the American Society of Criminology in Washington, D.C. this last November. It focuses specifically on the attitudes of guns within the CVI sites that we have been running a little bit over a year now. So just a quick abstract, we don't have to read through it, but generally what we're stating here is that we've seen an increase in gun violence, much to like what many of the presenters here have stated, particularly around 2021, right after COVID. We saw a spike in that time, and that was actually our peak year in gun violence throughout the city. So using community violence interventionists in the CVI sites, we've essentially used them to not only reduce violent crime, but change the attitudes towards gun violence, and then generally changing attitudes when it comes to violence intervention mediations as well. So for those who don't know what community violence intervention is, the idea is that we are working with individuals and we are meeting them where they are at in the community. The idea is that we know, as many have said in earlier, there's that code of the street, right? That you can't be punked out in the communities. You have to kind of come out with, at community with aggressive behavior. Also, not letting yourself be intimidated. A lot of this research has also just generally shown like the patterns of gang embeddedness. As you age out in the process, you typically kind of remove yourself from gang involvement. The CVI work that we're doing here in Louisville stems very much like what has been done in other cities, Chicago's ceasefire model, which use prevention, intervention, and community mobilization to reduce gun violence. Specifically, what they do is they use de-escalating tactics that they learned through the trainings that we provide at OVP. And again, as I was saying, the whole purpose, in addition to reducing gun violence, is changing those norms that will lead to long-term change in violence. And as many have said already, what we do when we're doing the CVI work, we use credible messengers. As many have said, these are individuals who have lived experiences within the community. They come from these neighborhoods. They know who they're interacting with. So they know typically the ins and outs of these communities. And when they're doing mediations, they're serving as a lot of research has showed that the mediations that the credible messengers use typically have a large impact on reducing violence. And a lot of the research has also shown that generally when they use community violence intervention or conflict mediation tactics like that we're using here in Louisville, there have been significant declines in violent crime. In fact, a systematic review recently showed that generally CVI work has had a significant impact on reducing gun violence throughout the country, and in fact in other areas around the world. So taking the focus more specifically within Louisville, as you can see, the incidents of violent crime are disproportionately clustered within specific geographic areas. Likely not a surprise to many of us here. Specifically, south or west of 9th is typically where we see the violence is very concentrated. And what we see here in the time peak between 2020 and 2024 was that about 49% of the gun violence over those years happened in just 10 neighborhoods. So how did we decide where we were going to implement the CVI sites? We basically looked at the aggregate map of gun violence over that time frame, and we looked at what areas had seen the most violent incidents and most number of victimizations in that time. What we found was that in those 4 areas where they typically run about a half a square mile, although they consisted of less than 0.5% of the city landmass, they accounted for more than 10% of all gun violence incidents. And so these are micro places. The sites that were selected compared based on total number of gun violence victimizations, poverty rates, household compositions. And as I mentioned, each site was approximately half a square mile. This was done in order to be consistent with what the research has shown to be most effective in CVI work. So CVI work to date, as many have mentioned here, there's that collaboration within the Pivot to Peace network. But specifically focusing within CVI, that's within boots on the ground, what we have seen to date, and this is as of last week, I believe, 168 conflict mediations within those 4 sites. A conflict mediation might look like when a violence interrupter sees that there are community members that it seems based on their lived experiences, based on their expertise, that there is likely going to be a situation that might escalate to a gun violence incident. What they do is they intervene in that spot and they basically use their conflict mediation tactics that they've learned throughout the training sessions, and they bring it to a resolution. Essentially, they're preventing gun violence. High-risk contacts, well over 21,000 in those 4 sites. A high-risk contact might be an individual when they see individuals, again, based on their experience and credibility, that they know that these individuals maybe just could benefit from having contacts with these credible messengers. Again, these are individuals who have the same lived experiences. So hearing it from somebody who has that same shared experience, it means a lot more. It resonates well with them. Several anecdotal evidence has shown from the VIs within Goodwill that they have been quick to respond to incidents in the community, and many times intervening in incidents that are taking place where victims are being assaulted, and they are quickly to respond and say, "Hey, look, let's resolve this situation." The goal is to always mediate an incident before it gets to the point where someone is being shot. And in that process, with long-term case management, which is the Pivot to Peace process, we've received over 40 clients that have been referred through that process. And then over 150 clients that have received immediate services through the VOA. Those are those immediate needs, right? So long-term case management might be when the client is now taking from the VOA, the Volunteers of America. They're funneled to our Pivot to Peace program, and that's where we have outreach workers similar to the VI. They have lived experiences, and they typically serve as case managers for them. So rather than it being from a medical perspective, these are from a community perspective that they're helping them day by day navigate through their world, through their lived experiences, and in managing not to be involved in gun violence. So the impact on violent crime, what we've seen here is that the results have varied specifically within sites at a time, but what we have seen is greater reductions in 2 of our sites. That's the Russell site and the Algonquin Park Hill site. And this data was as of last week, I believe. But the only one that really had an increase here prior to it having shifted its boundaries was Newburgh. Though when you look at the raw counts, it's not as large as compared to when you compare the drop for Algonquin Park Hill, for Russell, or even Taylor Berry. But generally speaking, we've seen a 31% reduction in gun violence victimizations in those 4 sites alone. So the data collection process from our attitudes and measuring attitudes and change in those changes in attitudes with gun violence. For a time period, there was a data collection prior to the CVI implementation. 9 months went by. Our data analysts went out there with the VIs again to collect a post-test assessment on attitudes towards guns in the community. So since then, we have been able to run some preliminary analyses with the goal that we'll do a follow-up in July of 26. So the survey participants, this is based off existing literature on surveys that have been done in the past in other cities. But typically what these questions ask are, they tap into concepts about gun violence use, legitimacy and procedural justice, or code of the street. One example of a question would be, if you see a guy on the street that beat you up or beat up your brother last week, would you A, threaten him with a gun, shoot the individual, or believe that it'd be better to pursue another resolution, essentially conflict mediation tactics? The requirements for participants in this study were young, 24, with the exception of Newburgh, where the age exception went up to 34, and that was based on just the demographics of Newburgh compared to others, the other sites. And many have asked us why we kept the survey to participants between 15 and 24. That's where we see, based on research in the criminal justice field, that where individuals hold the strongest values of attitudes towards guns. As we know, in the age crime curve, as you get older, you typically remove yourself from that lifestyle, and basically in gang violence, group violence. So we would expect to see the biggest change in individuals between the ages of 15 and 24. And I'll walk you through these, but what we did was a difference in differences test. We had the treatment sites, which was the 4 CVI sites, and we had control sites. Our data analysts in that process, between the 2 waves, collected over 700 surveys for both pre and post test assessments. And what we found was that so looking at the year legend, the blue line being the treatment, being the CVI sites, and the orange line being the control sites, we found that personal peaceful conflict management actually went up when compared to the control sites. And that was a statistically significant result. Here endorsed gun violence went down for both sites, but it wasn't statistically significant, but that's still in a positive direction for us. We're doing the good work. And lastly, though it was in a positive direction, we saw that both treatment and control sites actually saw endorsement of gun violence. A lot of this is likely due to the fact that even though we've seen reductions in these 4 sites and in the control sites, these are still the most violent areas in all of Louisville. So we can't expect that we would see these changes happen over 9 months. In fact, this is something that takes much time. And so that's why we wanted to follow up in an additional 9 months, hoping that we'll see any changes in the positive direction for us. Can I go back on this? I think we'll spikes.
You want to go back?
Yes, keep going. Thank you. So based on the success that we have seen within those 4 sites, we are now expanding to the California site. And we also just recently were granted funding for an East Russell site. But California is actually one of only 3 neighborhoods in Louisville that has actually experienced an increase in violent crime year to date, in addition to Parkland and Chickasaw. So as you see, there's a 40% increase in gun violence victimizations in California alone. And so we started CVI work as of mid-October this year. We've already done the assessments, the pre-test assessments. We'll do the post-test assessments in about 8 months to determine whether we've seen any changes in those attitudes towards guns and conflict mediation, and also whether we have any changes in violent crime. So the general findings, what we found was that the effects have been somewhat mixed in changing attitudes towards guns and peaceful conflict resolution. Though that may be the case, all sites experienced increases in personal peaceful conflict management. And just to wrap it up, while CVI sites have experienced a reduction in violent crime, norm changes were not necessarily found in wave 1. Lessons learned from this is that we need to increase the types of community engagement that we do, right? What we do with the VIs is that they serve as, in addition to credible messengers, they're educators in the community, and that they're changing norms that you shouldn't have to escalate with gun violence if you have a difference, right? They're changing those norms. And while that might not seem to have a change immediately, we're hoping that that is what leads to long-term sustainable change in community attitudes.
Thank you. So now what we're going to do is we want all the presenters to come up, and we're going to have a panel discussion, giving you an opportunity to ask questions.
I know
So-
we're cutting it very close to time. We are gonna cut it about 10 minutes shorter than what's on the agenda. Also, questions will have to go pretty fast. Also, there's a QR code circling the room. Please scan it and do our survey. We would like to know how we did and how we can improve stuff. But our speakers are making their way up here.
Also, I was gonna say, take a moment and look around the room and see who is not here. This room should be packed. So who is not here that needs to be here? And what group is not represented here? So I didn't see the faith-based community, which should be here as well. And this room should be packed. So it definitely needs to happen again, and it needs to be, more people need to be invited because this room should be packed. So that's just my observation. And I know there are a lot of people who work in this area who is, more than happy to be here. We just need to get the word out more. So with that being said, we're going to open it up for questions of the panel.
Private, mainly, it could be to anybody. Why do you feel like the parents are disengaged? What is the problem? I'm a grandmother. I'm raising my grandson because I lost my son, not to gun violence, but I'm raising him and we always talk. What's going on in school? I'm on him like this. What is it? Because he can't breathe. And and thanks to Demetrius, because that's my nephew. He's related to my children. And I'm sorry, I asked him, hey, there's an incident. What do I need to do? And he told me, and I've been on it. I take his phone. I have access to his bank account. I have access to everything. I know his grades. What's the disconnect with the parents, please? Anybody?
So a lot of my parents are suffering from their own mental health. When you look at depression, you have parents that come home straight from work, go to their rooms, lock themselves in the rooms, and don't engage with their kids. So it's a generational pattern with mental health issues, whether it's trauma, depression, community issues, balance, working 2 and 3 jobs, and they don't have the energy. So it's a lot that has to do with that.
I know I'm not on the panel, but I do work for the Division of Family Resource and Youth Service Centers, which is a program within most of the schools in Jefferson County. And I can say our school system is in trouble. And we need parents, we need community members and everybody to start, attending board meetings because our school is in trouble. A lot of stuff is not coming out in the media. That our school's in trouble. We don't have teachers that can, enough teachers to be in the schools, teaching our kids, culturally competent, all of that was said today. I applaud these folks up here because they brought it to you all. They're telling the truth of what it really is. And I can say our school system is in trouble. That's why you say your grandson can't read.
I'm at Fairdale. There was one incident, but ain't gonna be no more. And I let her know, this is my son's son. I'm raising him. This is my baby. It's my heart. I lost his dad. I ain't losing nobody else. But I do feel like there's not enough parents that are involved because when she looked at me, I was like, because she doesn't deal with that, but she dealt with this one. And I think sometimes we make excuses. I'm not saying that because I've been through a lot. I have 8 children. I've had kids in the pen. I think sometimes, and maybe I'm being too harsh, I think sometimes we have excuses. Because I've been depressed, but I'm not from here. I have 8 children. I had to do what I had to do to take care of my children. So do you think sometimes there's excuses? Because I didn't have time. She knows me because one of my kids is her. Do you think it's excuses?
I agree. Sometimes it is excuses, or not. I wouldn't necessarily say excuses. I would say sorry if you can't see me. Sometimes you can't, if you don't acknowledge what's going on, you can't necessarily deal with it. There is a lot of parents sometimes who are needing help, and there are kids who are helping out in the way that they know how to help out. So if you see your family struggling and you are helping your family out, sometimes parents will overlook how that help is coming in. And sometimes we're not acknowledging that this help may be coming from an activity that I may not approve of, but it's helping this family out. So I'm gonna just pray for you when you leave, and I'll pray that you come back. So I think just having more conversations and then also finding other solutions to be able to do that. Because I think there's not a lot of true, transparent conversations that go on just for the simple fact for me, at least from my lens, when people come to the hospital and I hear parents say, I didn't know my child was in this. And sometimes that is true. And sometimes it is, I knew something was happening, but I didn't take the time to have those conversations with my kid to really dig deep to figure out what was going on. And I didn't know it was this bad.
I just want to speak to it. It's a cultural thing. We just don't do it. And would you say 76% of the gun violence is happening in the Black community?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Because it's trending. And that's due to social media. Like, back to mental health, I wouldn't do nothing without it. So social media, now we get on there and tell our most intimate details, secrets, and everything that we going through. Oh, I stumped my toe. Oh, I don't feel this bad. And you know, they'll tell everything on there, but you won't talk to the person you have a problem with. And it even goes down with parents. Like, they letting social media raise their kids. Some of the parents are given options. There's no mandatory what you have to do. Parents are scared of their kids.
Mm-hmm. Well, say it.
And I'm gonna say it
It's
like
true.
that. They scared of their kids,
That
and
is
it got to
true.
do with the system too. Because working with justice involved you. I had an individual, and God bless me, passed due to his household not being right. So what happened was that he told the judge that his mom threatened him, and the judge told the mom if he threatened him again, that I'm gonna lock you up. He knew it. He threatened his mama with it.
Yeah.
So they're grown when they go to court, but when it comes down to being uh, disciplined, the mother has to make sure that they get there, but the child can say that they don't want legal representation. So it's the culture, which is back to the 76% of the gun violence happening. Like, it can be down, but it's not down in the Black community, because this is what we do. We meet aggression with aggression. And our parents are scared of their kids, and we vent to the wrong people, and we don't. What's the problem when it comes to mental health? We just see it as a bad thing. We haven't really got into talking to somebody that can really help us professionally. We talking to friends that are going through their own mess.
Yep, definitely. Any other questions? Any questions?
Hey everybody, I'm Angela. I just was going to speak on the whole parent thing as well. I think everybody said exactly a lot of things, but I also think that if I could be transparent, just being a parent, I get tired of somebody telling me that I'm not a good parent. Or I get tired of reading that parents are the problem. I get tired of this parent can't do this, or this parent can't do this, or this parent is this, or this parent's got to stop doing this, or this parent has to, like, after a while, it just gets very heavy because everyone, of course, is going through things. I think maybe just like the dialogue of how we present what support we need to give to our families and to our parents, maybe that needs to shift, like how we say it or how we talk about it, or like, you're this grandmother that does this, or you may not be scared, but I might be scared of my son. And so now I look bad because I might be scared of my son who's 11 and I'm by myself and he's autistic and he can beat the shit out of me sometimes, excuse my language, right? Because of the disability that he has. So I may walk in a little bit of a fear, but then I don't want to be ostracized because I might have that a little bit, right? So I need like that dialogue or that language to be a little different. And I think that sometimes with we want to help people, right? But sometimes maybe instead of like trying to fix people, we got to find out like what's missing in individuals' homes or mindsets, and then replace that with something positive, something, some resources, maybe support. Maybe I just don't know as a parent. I'm not saying me, but I'm just saying as a parent, I just don't, maybe I just don't know how to discipline because I mean, there's not a book out here. I mean, I can read books all day, but maybe I just don't know how to discipline because maybe I wasn't disciplined, as what Dr. Sharita was talking about. Sometimes that stuff is generational and I just don't know, right? But then if I go ask for support or resources, I'm looked at or judged. So I think our shift of mindset maybe needs to change, and how we need to get parents in these type of settings and not be told that we're X, Y, and Z, but like, this is a resource. We want to support you. We want to help find what's missing, not fix you. but we want to also be real with you. Sometimes it is your fault, right? But how do we got to create that relationship first before we can like kind of get real a little bit, because that's what takes people away. So I think like even this is great, like to get on social media and say, listen, y'all missed something, because there's a lot of people in here that was just trying to support. We got some people that need are creating these support groups. Like I have a support group for parents that have kids that have invisible disabilities. And that support group is not me standing up there and telling them what they should and should not do. Because my son, I don't know what to do sometimes. That support group is just going to be like, we have an ecosystem together, and I can call you. If my child, I call Charlie, because Charlie has a different way of disciplining, and she helps me, right? I'd be like, Charlie, I need a break. I can't do this. I'm crying. He's busted a hole in my wall. But if I say that out loud, what kind of parent is she? No, it is, I just need somebody to step in. So now I got this ecosystem of people that don't look at me wrong, that don't judge me, and we all going something similar, and we supporting each other. So I think that maybe that's the scope that we need, instead of having these workshops and all these parent engagement nights. We need to have like support groups to be like, this is a treat. Here's my group me. Let's do some TikToks. I don't know, drink a little bit, whatever you got to do, right? So that's just what I was going to, say about the parent.
Well, I can speak on that. I advocate for the parents, because sometimes you just don't have control of your child. Some people be saying, get your kids. What if they can't? Some kids don't like their parents and the parents don't like the kid. I've had parents say, man, he makes me sick to my stomach. And like she said, it's family. Like she might have a problem with the daddy and take it out on the child. My daddy didn't mess with me because my mama didn't like him. He wasn't in the street. Go ahead.
I was gonna ask a question to end on a lighthearted note, but I was gonna ask, can you all remind us of protective factors that you've seen work in community that kept some of the kids from engaging in violence?
So for the Future Healer program, some of the protective factors that we utilize or we try to incorporate are positive figures, positive relationships with peers and adults who are other than parents outside the home. So when we do mentorship, that really, really matters. It helps when mentors are aspirational, that they have something to learn, to engage with. So that's why we like the healthcare sciences as a tool, because that's the tool we have as a hospital and a medical school now. And that's why, bosses with instead of bangers, not bangers, bosses, not bangers. They're using entrepreneurship. It's the same. I mean, it's similar, right? So you can use whatever, for mentorship, and modeling all of that. So you can use what you have in your toolbox, right? That's what I'm saying. And the other things are educational attainment is a protective factor. If you go to the CDC website and just search in their toolbox gun violence prevention, there's a whole list of protective factors. But the ones that we use are mostly positive, relationships, and then educational attainment. So we're encouraging a love of learning. So we use hands-on activities, STEM, health sciences, again, things like that. And then just overall health and mental health. So we talk about whole body wellness. So we talk about the content that our kiddos are learning is how does the heart work? What is nutrition? What is diabetes? What is colon, cancer awareness and things like that. So they're learning about their bodies so that they can care about their bodies, care about what's happening with their parents' bodies, and things like that. And then every month when we meet, we talk about mental health, a different type of aspect of mental health. So we're talking about whole body wellness. Correct, Mike?
No, you did good. You did good. You got to catch on to it. But the protective thing I would say is that being mindful of social media, this is where I'm at with it, because this is where a lot of our kids are. You really have to be engaged with what they watching, what they doing, what they exposing. Back to what she said, it's just exposure. Because if you take a child out of their environment and expose them to something else, if you ask them what do they want or what do they want to do, they can't tell you. And I ain't no medical science type person, but their brain's not developed. So you take them, they really don't know. You can't ask them that. So you have to, the protective way I see is just exposing them to new things and being mindful of what social media is exposing them to.
Thank you very much. Due to time, we're going to start wrapping it up. Does anybody else on the panel have anything, closing remarks?
I just wanted to I wanted to touch on the graphic that was put up there with involving the CBI sites. When the gentleman put up the graphic with the 4 CBI sites, they put on there that they was adding a 5th one, which was in the California neighborhood. But if you look at that brochure that I passed out, California had a CBI site I was the program manager over. And due to whatever reason, the funding was pulled for that site. So then when the funding gets pulled, the site gets removed, and then you see the data that runs parallel with it. So I just wanted to, I just wanted to give some background information about that. That's all.
Thank you. Just to close, I want to close with, do you have anything you want?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
So I wanted to clarify, Angela said she calls me. I believe that discipline is not physical at all. Because working in the prison from the age I was 19 years old, I was the youngest person hired for the Department of Juvenile Justice here in the state of Kentucky. So I never wanted my kids or any kids around me to believe that if I hit you, I have to hit you for you to do something. So my kids, and Angela, you know how if you walk up to a kid, you do this and they flinch. My kids don't flinch because they've never been hit. They're 18 and 19 years old, and they're outstanding children. So I think we need to be in places that we can learn alternatives so we can implement those alternatives for different things. So to wrap it up, I want to say that I said on a community panel the other night, we need a community inventory. We need to find out what's in our community, what's effective, and so we can be intentional in bringing other spaces so we're not duplicating the same things over and over again in silos, so we can work collectively. So with that, that was my take on tonight. And so
yes, to close, I want to close with a quote. Yes.
To tap in on what she.
Okay.
It is organization gang banging out here. Nobody is working together. And I got to fix my nobody. A lot of us are not working together, whether it be due to the funding or who's at a macro or a micro level. And grassroots are usually exploited because grassroots have the connection and the relationships, but you have your $100,000 salary directors getting paid more than the person who's actually involving themselves in the dangers in the community. So it's a role reversal, and it's definitely a corporate market when it comes to outreach. And they put us against each other with these competitive grants. And then when they hire individuals like ourselves, they divide and conquer. And it usually somebody that don't look like us working in our organization or in our neighborhoods. And they have the platforms to create change, but what it really is, they have the resources. And if you get behind somebody like Norman Parker, who has the attention of his community, who bought into it, supported and amplified before you come in and try to take over it. So if anybody's recording it, I know I am. But that's the issue. It's like,
Thank you. To close, I want to close with a quote from the movie Cloud Atlas. Our lives are not our own. From the womb, as we have seen in the research, to the tomb, we are bound to others, past and present. And by each crime and every act of kindness, we birth our future. So what kind of future are we birthing? Think about it.